Okay, so today we are going to do something a little different on the Palestine Pod. I want to share with you a submission that I've been working on for the last several weeks as part of my contribution to the Gaza Tribunal, the People's Tribunal that has been formed in response to the ongoing Gaza genocide that's being led by Professor Richard Falk. I was asked to prepare a submission on the political economy of the Gaza genocide, essentially answer the questions of who's profiting from this and how, so that we can better understand possible targets for ongoing civil society activism, and leverage that in terms of our actions going forward as we attempt to end the genocide, which is now in its 19th month. So for the first 20 or so minutes, I'm going to share my submission. So my submission is entitled Nakba Liberation and Decolonization Through a Political Economic Lens, the Case of the Gaza Genocide. As Patrick Wolfe observed, settler colonialism destroys to replace. Wolfe illustrated this logic by citing Theodor Herzl, the founder of political Zionism, who wrote, "If I wish to substitute a new building for an old one, I must demolish before I construct." From its inception, Zionism was conceived as a settler colonial project. In 1895, Theodor Herzl penned a letter to Cecil Rhodes in his diaries, appealing to the imperialist and architect of British settler colonialism in Africa to support, quote, something colonial and a colony to be founded in a piece of Asia Minor, in other words, Palestine. It was no secret that this, quote, something colonial would require force to bring about. In 1919, the King Crane Commission concluded that, quote, no British officer consulted believed that the Zionist program could be carried out except by force of arms. In 1923, Jabotinsky openly admitted that, quote, Zionist colonization, even the most restricted, must either be terminated or carried out in defiance of the will of the native population. Between 1897 to 1947, with the support of the British Empire, the Zionist movement established the institutional infrastructure for its settler colonial project. It created organizations which attempted to acquire Palestinian land, such as the Jewish National Fund, coordinate Jewish-only immigration and settlement, such as the Jewish Agency, fundraise globally, such as Keren HaYesod, and promote exclusive Jewish labor policies, such as the Histrodot. The formation of the Haganah in 1920 provided a paramilitary force capable of enforcing Zionist objectives through organized violence. During this period, the majority Palestinian population was systematically denied comparable rights. In 1925, Zionist banker David Levinson argued that the colonization of Palestine should take place using economic means. In other words, the accumulation and control of land and capital by Jewish financial institutions and other enterprises in a business-like manner. Levinson's approach would eventually prove insufficient, as by 1945, the Zionist movement had only succeeded in purchasing less than 6% of Palestinian land, and Jewish people remained a demographic minority, despite extensive efforts to finance and incentivize settlement. As Zionist leaders long recognized, the project to establish a Jewish majority state in Palestine would not be fulfilled without the mass forced displacement of Palestinians. Between 1947 to 1949, this objective was violently realized. As documented by Israeli historian Ilan Pappé in The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, Zionist leadership devised Plan Dalit, a military blueprint for the systematic depopulation of Palestinian cities, towns, and villages. It authorized Zionist militias to expel and kill Palestinians and destroy their homes to prevent return. In 1948, a self-declared Jewish state, Israel, was established on 78% of Palestine through the expulsion of over 750,000 Palestinians, the destruction of over 500 cities, towns, and villages, and the killing of approximately 15,000 people in over 70 massacres. Once formed, Israel codified the ethnic cleansing it achieved through force through adoption of a national legal framework that denied the Palestinian refugees the right to return, usurped the totality of their property and assets for the benefit of Jewish settlement, and denationalized them en masse. Palestinians who remained within the new state's borders in the aftermath of the 1948 Nakba were placed under military rule for approximately 2 decades. Today, they continue to face systemic exclusion from housing, healthcare, education, and employment, and are subject to a whole host of discriminatory policies seeking to erase their Palestinian identity, history, and culture. In 1967, Israel occupied the remaining 22% of Palestinian land in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and Gaza, collectively known as the Occupied Palestinian Territory, marking the beginning of the military occupation now in its 57th year, placing millions of Palestinians under direct military rule. In the West Bank, Palestinians have been subjected to ongoing land theft, home demolitions, fragmentation of territory due to settlement expansion, settler violence, night raids, extrajudicial killing, mass detention and torture, and severe restrictions on the freedom of movement through permit systems, checkpoints, and Palestinian-only roads. In the Gaza Strip, the Israeli military presence and Jewish settlements were withdrawn in 2005 and replaced with regular Israeli bombardment campaigns and the imposition of a crippling 17-year-long siege. Across the OPT, Israel retains control over borders, airspace, the movement of people and goods, security, and the registry of the entire Palestinian population. Meanwhile, Palestinian refugees, now in their fourth or fifth generations, continue to languish in camps across surrounding Arab countries, denied their right to return for over 77 years. While the Palestinian experience under Zionist colonization varies in the type and scope of violence, often described as, quote, different laboratories of oppression, Israel's treatment of Palestinians anywhere they are reflects a single objective: to privilege Jewish Israelis in the distribution of land and resources, and to ensure that the fewest Palestinians possible remain on their land. That Israel would seek to ethnically cleanse Gaza is not surprising. The majority of Gaza's population are refugees or descendants of refugees expelled from their homes in 1948 and denied their right to return. For the Zionist movement, whose founding mythology rested on the fiction of a land without people for a people without a land, Gaza has long represented a political and demographic contradiction, a physical and proverbial thorn in its side, serving as a living reminder of the ongoing Nakba, which Israel denies, and the enduring Palestinian right to return, a right that Israel has spent decades attempting unsuccessfully to extinguish. Moreover, successive Israeli governments have consistently framed Palestinians as a demographic threat, citing fears that Palestinian population growth would surpass that of Jewish Israelis across Israel and the OPT. By 2021, there were roughly 6.8 million Jewish Israelis and 6.8 million Palestinians living in the territory between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River, including 2.3 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip alone. It's not difficult to understand why, absent mass displacement or extermination, the indigenous Palestinian population may have eventually outnumbered Jewish Israelis, thereby threatening the sustainability of the settler colonial regime. Historically, Israel's settler colonial expansion has advanced under the fog of war, notably in 1948 and 1967. The same logic appears at work today. Following October 7th, Israel unleashed a campaign of destruction in Gaza of unprecedented scale, targeting its population, infrastructure, and land, with the apparent goal of facilitating the rapid expansion of Israel's settler colonial objectives. While Israeli officials publicly framed the campaign in terms of self-defense and the necessity to retrieve hostages and destroy Hamas, these narratives functioned as hasbara, or propaganda, intended to obscure Israel's true motives and manufacture consent for Israel's crimes. In reality, Israeli leaders have repeatedly and explicitly affirmed their genuine intentions for Gaza: carry out a new Nakba, forcibly displace Palestinians, and permanently resettle the territory. In October 2023, following the commencement of Israel's bombardment campaign, a leaked document from Israel's Ministry of Intelligence proposed the mass expulsion of Gaza's population to Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. Around the same time, Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich expressed support for the, quote, voluntary migration, which of course should be understood as forcible transfer, of Palestinians from Gaza to other countries. In November, Israel's agricultural minister, Avi Dichter, proclaimed that Israel was now rolling out the Gaza Nakba. By December, an Israeli real estate firm responsible for building illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank, began advertising a new real estate project for settlements in Gaza. In January 2024, dozens of Knesset members organized a conference attended by thousands devoted to planning Jewish settlement of Gaza. In May 2024, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu revealed the, quote, Gaza 2035 plan, which envisioned the territory as a demilitarized economic zone. The plan involved rebuilding from nothing, exploiting Palestinian gas fields for Israeli profit and Palestinian labor to support the development of Israeli-led industries such as electric vehicle manufacturing. In February 2025, plans to colonize Gaza were elevated to the international stage when U.S. President Donald Trump announced during a joint press conference with Netanyahu that the United States would, quote, take over and, quote, own the Gaza Strip and redevelop it into, quote, the Riviera of the Middle East. The plan included the forced displacement of approximately 2 million Palestinians to neighboring countries. By April 2025, over 800 Jewish families had signed up to move to would-be Gaza settlements. In May 2025, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu overtly declared for the first time since October 2023 Israel's intention to permanently, quote, control all of Gaza, adding that the, quote, war would only end on the condition of implementation of President Trump's revolutionary plan to depopulate Gaza. That same month, Smotrich admitted that within 6 months, Gaza's population would be confined to a narrow swath of land, with the remainder of the enclave, quote, totally destroyed. Meanwhile, the obliteration of Gaza unfolded at an astonishing scale. By December 2024, Israel had destroyed over 92% of all housing units and approximately 70% of all infrastructure in the Gaza Strip. In May 2025, it was reported that since October 2023, the Israeli army had used over 100,000 tons of explosives, committing over 12,000 massacres that killed or disappeared over 62,000 people, although the true death toll associated with the genocide is widely considered to be much higher, notably erasing over 2,200 families from the civil registry. At least 100,000 Palestinians have already been forcibly displaced into Egypt, with reports that since October 2023, thousands of others sought refuge in neighboring Arab countries and some Western countries. At the time of preparation of the submission, the Israeli military has turned 70% of Gaza into a no-go zone, encircling 4 non-contiguous shrinking pieces of land within the Gaza Strip where the surviving Palestinians remain. Whether or not Israel succeeds in expanding its settler colonial project remains to be seen, and will depend on a number of factors, including the steadfastness of the Palestinian people and whether or not third states apply sufficient pressure through sanctions, embargoes, and other international accountability mechanisms to compel Israel to restrain its behavior. Nevertheless, the scope and intensity of the current destruction and the clear alignment between Israeli military conduct, political discourse, and settlement planning leave little doubt that left to its own devices, Israel will not stop until it erases Gaza and its people and replaces them. Viewed through a political economic lens, settler colonialism creates vast opportunities for unjust enrichment for the settler regime and its partners, while imposing devastating losses on the colonized. The most direct form of enrichment occurs through the appropriation of land, assets, and resources. So as already explained, by May 2025, Israel had already turned over 70% of Gaza into no-go zones, encircling the remaining population into these overcrowded and non-contiguous enclaves. With senior Israeli officials declaring intentions to permanently control Gaza, the prospect of formal annexation of parts of or all Gaza looms. Meanwhile, Israeli military forces engaged in widespread looting. 1 month into the genocide, the Israeli army's loot unit had stolen $1.3 million from Gaza. By March 2025, this figure rose to $27.6 million US dollars, combining seizures from Gaza and Lebanon. Individual soldiers were also documented reselling stolen personal items of Palestinians online. Palestinian natural resources were also swiftly targeted. In November 2023, BP and other energy firms were granted gas exploration licenses in occupied Palestinian waters by the Israeli Ministry of Energy, flagrantly violating the Palestinian right to sovereignty over their natural resources. A second layer of profiteering stems from the destruction itself. The genocide has fueled profits for arms, surveillance, and technology firms. In the first year, the US provided Israel with $23 billion in military aid, funds that largely returned to US weapons giants such as Boeing, Lockheed Martin, RTX, General Dynamics, and Caterpillar. By late 2024, US arms manufacturers had recorded record profits resulting from Israel's assault on Gaza and its then expansion of its war on Lebanon. RTX, for example, which manufactures the 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs that turned most of Gaza to rubble, saw an annual return of 82.69%, outperforming the S&P 500 by about 46%. Israeli defense companies also saw windfalls. State-owned Rafael's 2024 revenue jumped 27% to $4.8 billion, with 54% coming from Israeli military contracts. Its order backlog hit a record $17.5 billion, with half from exports, representing a 24% increase from 2023. Israel Aerospace Industries reported also a higher than ever backlog of orders in 2024, again, mostly for exports. As Antony Lowenstein documents in the Palestine Laboratory, Israeli weapons marketed as battle-tested on Palestinians have reached 140 countries worldwide. Arms deals increasingly shape Israel's diplomatic relationships, often included in normalization agreements with Arab states. Profiteering has even extended to private security and humanitarian aid schemes. Following Israel's relentless attacks on UNRWA, a private U.S. military contracting firm run by a former CIA officer was hired to man checkpoints in Gaza and oversee the delivery of humanitarian aid subject to risky and invasive conditions, cementing Israel's efforts to weaponize the delivery of humanitarian aid. Jordan even profited up to $400,000 for every airdrop of aid into Gaza and up to $2,200 for every truck entering Gaza through Jordan. Tech companies have also profited. Google and Amazon's $1.2 billion cloud computing contract with the Israeli government, Project Nimbus, continues to provide surveillance and AI infrastructure for Israel's military. In addition, Microsoft's Azure cloud software has enabled Israeli surveillance of Palestinians and been used by the Israeli Air Force's OFEC unit, which manages databases of potential targets for airstrikes. In parallel, Palestinians seeking to flee the genocide through the Rafah crossing were charged anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 a head by private Egyptian firm Hella, whose owner, business tycoon Ibrahim El-Orghani, was reported to have made at least $2 million per day from Palestinians, earning a reported $118 million in a mere 3 months. Once destruction is complete, reconstruction presents a new frontier for capital accumulation. Whether Gaza will ultimately be rebuilt by Palestinians and for Palestinians, as required under international law, or redeveloped under Israeli control remains to be seen. But the interests lining up are clear. Construction, cement, steel, real estate, energy, security, technology, and investment firms all stand to profit from reconstruction. On the flip side, for Palestinians, the economic toll of the Gaza genocide has been staggering. The obliteration of housing, farms, businesses, educational institutions, and hospitals, coupled with the killing of Gaza's leading professionals, as well as the tightened siege and relentless attacks against UNRWA, Gaza's main employer, have hollowed out Gaza's economy. A joint UN, EU, and World Bank report estimated reconstruction alone will require at least $53 billion US dollars. Yet the impact of the Gaza genocide cannot properly be assessed without understanding the context in which the genocide arose. Decades of economic warfare enshrined in an Israeli policy of de-development, a 17-year-long siege severely restricting the entry and exit of people and goods, regular bombardment campaigns, a 56-year-long brutal military occupation, and the 1948 Nakba have all long eroded Gaza's economy. For example, UNCTAD estimated that without Israel's 17-year-long siege and bombardment campaigns, Gaza's gross domestic product in 2023 would have been, on average, 77% higher than its actual level, implying an estimated cumulative loss of $35.8 billion of unrealized GDP potential during the period of 2007 to 2023. In 2019, UNCTAD also found that Israel's exploitation and obstruction of Palestinian access to natural gas and oil reserves in the Levant Basin, valued at a total of $524 billion, imposed escalating economic losses for the Palestinian people. As for the 1948 Nakba, Atif Kubursi estimated that Palestinian monetary losses alone equaled over 1.1 billion pounds. Nevertheless, the biggest barrier to Gaza's economic recovery is the fact that the genocidal violence is still ongoing. Gaza can recover, but for this to happen, Israel must first and foremost cease its daily atrocities. As Dr. Fayez Abu Shamali, the former mayor of Khan Yunis, explained, Palestinians are capable and determined to rebuild. He said, quote, do not believe those that say rebuilding Gaza will take 10 years or that rebuilding Gaza requires billions. This is an exaggeration meant to push people to leave the Gaza Strip and give people the impression that they will not be able to stay on their land. We, the people of Gaza, are capable of rebuilding it with any Arab assistance. The proof of this is the Khan Yunis municipality, which managed to restore the water supply, organize and clean the sewage networks, open the roads, and bring life back to Khan Yunis with nothing but a single old bulldozer. Through the efforts and determination of the people, we can rebuild Gaza. Do not believe the media propaganda. We are capable, and Gaza will be rebuilt. We are staying, and we will not leave this place. Palestinian revolutionary George Habash understood that the real enemy is not Israel and Zionism only, but American imperialism, describing Israel as a bodyguard for American imperial interests. In this light, the Gaza genocide exemplifies the political economy of settler colonial violence, in which the elimination of Palestinian life and future is inseparable from global systems of extraction and profit. While ideology, geopolitics, and other drivers play their roles in this colonial project, the material incentives sustaining this violence must not be overlooked. As others have observed, settler colonialism cannot be dismantled without dismantling the capitalist systems that feed it. The immediate cessation of Israel's genocidal policies, a total unconditional Israeli withdrawal, provision of unconstrained and Palestinian-led humanitarian aid, reconstruction by Palestinians for Palestinians, and full reparations in accordance with international law for the entirety of the human and material losses sustained over the last 19 months, including cultural, environmental, and psychological losses, are necessary preconditions to achieve justice for the Gaza genocide. Yet on their own, these measures are not sufficient. Reparations, which are mandated under international law, must take place within a broader decolonial framework, aimed not only at remedying the harm which took place, but at dismantling the structures which brought about the harm in the first place. This decolonial transformation is needed to undo the ongoing Nakba across all of historic Palestine. It entails both the material and structural undoing of the Zionist project alongside a comprehensive reordering of systems and institutions to prevent the continuation of injustice. Stolen land, property, and assets must be restituted to their rightful Palestinian owners, dating from the inception of the ongoing Nakba to the present. Israel must stop obstructing the right of return, whether to Gaza or to homes and properties that were forcibly depopulated in 1948 and beyond. It must also reverse its mass denationalization policies and its illegal occupation in the OPT, and provide compensation for nearly a century of state-perpetrated harm. It must rehabilitate injured and displaced persons and fulfill the principle of satisfaction, including truth-telling, acknowledgement, and accountability for its crimes. The legal, institutional, epistemic, and ideological foundations of settler colonial violence must also be dismantled, including the apartheid regime, Nakba denial, and colonial narratives, and the logic of Jewish supremacy. Instead, new frameworks must be established, ones rooted in justice, equality, and freedom for all peoples in the land of Palestine. States must fulfill their duties to cooperate in ending breaches of peremptory norms, norms of the highest order from which no derogation is possible, including the crime of genocide, illegal occupation, apartheid, and the denial of the right of self-determination of the Palestinian people. This requires the immediate severing of all military, political, diplomatic, and economic relations with Israel, including investment and trade ties, and supporting Palestinian-led initiatives for justice and return. Corporations must also not be allowed to profit from the settler colonial process. Their complicity in the Gaza genocide demands accountability and must be challenged by states, lawyers working in the business and human rights space, and civil society. Ultimately, the Gaza genocide lays bare how settler colonial expansion operates through a capitalist logic of destruction and dispossession, turning erasure into profit. Confronting its consequences demands not only redress in Gaza for the genocide, but a sustained and far-reaching decolonial process to undo the ongoing Nakba across all of historic Palestine. Now, the written version of this, which includes an introduction, which I did not read, is available on my Substack. All of the claims and references, facts, statistics, all that are cited through links that are embedded in the text. So if you're interested in pulling up any of the sources to which I referred, you can find those all directly on my Substack.
I hope you link to an archive because they can disappear links pretty quickly.
Look, I'm just trying to do what I can do, but yeah, hopefully, I mean, it'll be on there as long as it's on there, as long as it doesn't get removed. You know a little something about being removed.
Sure do. I was censored by Meta for my Palestine advocacy. My name is Michael Schertzer. If you listen to the podcast, many people know me as Mikey Intifada. It's a name that was given to me by Israeli Hasbara propagandists. I'm a Jewish anti-Zionist comedian, and I was disappeared from Meta's platform over my Palestine content without any content violation, warning, or chance to appeal. And I knew the moment that I saw Jordana Cutler's profile in my story views that it was only a matter of time. I texted a few of my friends like I was going down on the Titanic, and I was like, it's been an honor serving with you folks. For those people who don't know Jordana Cutler, she is Meta's policy chief for Israel and the Jewish diaspora, which is a real title that is allotted to her at Facebook. She's responsible for stripping SJP and other Palestinian liberation accounts from the platform, and apparently a part of her purview as the policy chief for Israel and the Jewish diaspora is to hunt down Jews in the diaspora who disagree with genocide. So I've seen this all play out before many times with the accounts of Palestinian journalists on the ground and activists in diaspora, because let's be clear, the main victims of censorship online are not Jewish comedians in America. The main victims are obviously Palestinians on the ground who are being murdered, right? Journalists who are being murdered, and then their accounts deleted so that you can't even see the record of their murder. Sada Social documented over 23,000 digital violations against Palestinian content on social media platforms over the course of a year, with Meta platforms accounting for over half of the violations. Now, if you've been a listener of the Palestine Pod, then you know that this isn't even the first time that I've lost an Instagram account or had it disappeared without recourse. It happened in 2021 at the same time that they took down Pod alum Nurdeen Kiswani's account, right? We did a podcast about it, episode 48 of the Palestine Pod, called Erasure. And Nurdeen has since been permanently banned from Meta's platform. I can confirm she doesn't miss it. If you Google my name, Michael Schertzer, you will still see the results for the shell of my Instagram page, which had amassed over 90,000 followers. The next result is, of course, my Canary Mission profile. I've been on there since October 6th, 2023, which is a point of pride because I'm not one of these people who popped up after the Al-Aqsa flood to hawk a book that's already been written better by Palestinians. On my Instagram profile, I was collaborating with mutual aid projects like the Samir Project, who provides food and water in Gaza. I was boosting numerous fundraisers and educating people about the history of Jewish anti-Zionism, the Palestinian liberation movement, and helping people envision a better world. Because I want people to pay attention to the work of living revolutionary Ismatu Gwendolyn and understand from their work that art making is world making. And the reason that they censor artists is because we have the ability to help people envision a better world. The censorship was part of a platform-wide crackdown that also saw a very popular Irish comedian disappeared with an account that boasted over 300,000 followers. He was booted from TikTok and demonetized on YouTube as well. Popular Twitch streamer Hassan Piker was deplatformed from Twitch briefly for covering the shooting of the 2 Israeli embassy workers. Do you guys know what it's like to be the least famous person disappeared online in a day? It is confusing, to say the least. The thought police are closing in, and their narrative is so fragile that they will go to great lengths to hide anything that undercuts Zionism. Being fully disappeared means that they were so threatened by what I have to say that they took extreme action. On little old me, they weren't satisfied with the typical tactics of shadow banning, purging followers, or taking down individual posts. The disappearance of my account is an admission that my very existence is so upsetting to their narrative. They feel the need to get rid of me entirely. And that's something that I share with Palestinians. To be frank, it is an honor to have had my social media account terminated for the cause of Palestinian liberation. It is an honor to have been able to sacrifice something. I view the disappearance of my account as a compliment to the work that I'm doing. I will never stop speaking about Palestinian liberation, whether it's to an audience of 90,000 or 9. I will die on this hill. All glory to the martyrs of Palestine. Now, let's talk about Jordana Cutler, that wicked witch of the West Bank who put my account in a digital El Salvadorian prison. Jordana Cutler, the woman responsible for sending my account to a farm upstate, is a former Likud official who worked for the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Then she was chief of staff at the Israeli embassy in DC. After that, she went directly to Meta as their public policy director, Israel and the Jewish diaspora. She is literally our generation's Goebbels. And just like Goebbels, she's disappearing Jewish people and Palestinians and marginalized communities. The Likud party is, of course, the continuation of the Irgun, the Zionist terrorists responsible for the Nakba, and the current party in charge. They are the ideological heirs to Jabotinsky and Menachem Begin, who were virulent fascists. Jabotinsky actually studied under Mussolini. So these are the people she represents. The people responsible for the first instance of terrorism in Palestine, the bombing of the King David Hotel. The people responsible for the Nakba. The people still doing a Holocaust to the Palestinian people and the people of Congo and Sudan. She has so much blood on her hands, she probably doesn't even use a pen to sign checks. Now, there are no other groups from Meta's point of view or country that gets their own censorship regime on Meta. Meta's own internal audit found that Facebook discriminates against Palestinians. It violates their rights. And it's no coincidence that it is also the most pro-Israel platform that collaborates directly with the Israeli government. Palestinians have been arrested for incitement after Meta handed over their data to the Israeli government. Now, in April 2025, Jordana Cutler, she made this speech at the Jewish News Syndicate, which frankly sounds like something we would be accused of. Jewish News Syndicate? I can't believe they went with that name. Was the URL for Jewish Cabal Network taken? Anyways, she made a speech recently where she talks about how she's living out the, quote, Zionist dream after moving to be a settler in Palestine. 600 plus days into this Holocaust of the Palestinian people, and she's up there on stage talking about living the Zionist dream. She's like the opposite of MLK Jr. Jordana is on stage like, I have a nightmare that one day people will be judged by the color of their skin and not the content of their character. She says she's proud to live in the same city as the Maccabees. Did you know that if you ask Britannica, where did the Maccabees live? The answer is Palestine. The Maccabees, you know, that ragtag underdog militia. Remember when Jews rooted for David instead of Goliath? Everyone remembers the Maccabees having an iron dome. Everyone knows the Maccabees were cutting off food, water, and power to the people they were fighting, right? Maccabees, famous for bombing hospitals, killing journalists, torturing medics to death. The Maccabees, famous for dressing up in the clothing of the people they've just slaughtered. I wonder if the Maccabees were carving the Star of David into people's faces. Maccabees. That's the story where there was a limited amount of oil, right? Pretty strange lack of self-awareness that you could reference the Maccabees and be withholding oil from the Palestinian people. Dude, if the Maccabees were alive today, Jordana Cutler would cover up footage of them getting murdered by a quadcopter. She says that they have strict policies against terrorism. That's why Jewish anti-Zionists posting mutual aid get the boot, but literal Zionist terrorists who are uploading the war crimes, who are uploading their own war crimes, don't seem to have any account issues. You can still see numerous accounts posting their war crimes against the Palestinian people, Israelis, despite Meta having been made aware of this phenomenon long ago. I remember one time I spoke to a Meta employee who asked to remain anonymous, and he told me that my account had been put in a digital checkpoint. I was like, damn, you guys are doing checkpoints online? Very Zionist behavior. If you've got policies that stop harassing, why did they leak my address numerous times on Instagram? If you've got policies to stop harassment, why do I receive death threats regularly and violent threats literally every day from Zionists? Specific protections for Israelis and Jews. Because to her, Jewish supremacy extends to an online platform. As of April 12, 2025, Meta deleted over 90,000 posts at Israel's request. Meta also significantly expanded automated takedowns since October 7th, resulting in an estimated 38.8 million additional posts being, quote, actioned upon, end quote, across Facebook and Instagram since late 2023. Actioned upon, in Facebook terms, means that a post was either removed, banned, or suppressed. Little digital checkpoint situation. I wonder if you have to speak checkpoint Hebrew at the digital checkpoint also. Where are you from? Do you love Israel? Do you love Israel? Who is your grandfather? Who's your grandfather's grandfather? Did he love Israel? No, because it didn't exist. And it still doesn't. Thank you so much. She says that we banned content with harmful stereotypes about Jews who run the world. Harmful stereotypes about Jews who run the world. To prove that wrong, we are going to delete the account of anyone who disagrees with us. We're going to throw you in a digital El Salvadorian jail if you say that we are too powerful. At the same conference, on that same stage and same podium, there was a guy by the name of Norm Coleman, chairman of the Republican Jewish Coalition, who said, play the clip.
The masters of the universe are Jews. You know, we've got Altman and AI, we got Zuckerberg, we got Sergey Brin, we got the group across the board, Jan Combs, you know, founded WhatsApp. It's us.
That would be like if someone said, you're a cannibal, and you're like, no, I'm not, and then you ate them. Someone accused you of murder, and they say, how dare you? I am so offended you would say that. And then you kill them. It's a very effective strategy for getting the point across. She says that the term Zionist can be used as a proxy for Jews and Israelis. I'll call out Israelis straight to their fucking face and say Israelis. But also what you're doing, that definition, in your effort to, quote, stop anti-Semitism, you are engaging in anti-Semitism. Never mind the fact that there are millions of Christian Zionists. Never mind the fact that most Israelis consider themselves atheist, even though God supposedly gave them the land. Now, anyone who uses the word Zionist must be talking about Jews according to Facebook, according to Meta. How did we go from genocide Joe, you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist Biden, to Meta interpreting all use of the word Zionist as a proxy for Jews? Is that not jarring for anyone? I think the best way to push back on the idea that Zionists control the media is to disappear your political opponents without notice or recourse. I think that does a lot to combat people's thoughts about Zionist control over the media. It's a bold strategy. It's like the best way to convince people Zionists are not controlling everything is to openly control things. Sort of like reverse psychology, which I think just cancels out to psychology. I'm playing checkers, they're playing battleship. It's a delicate balance, she says, between safety and expression. And this makes me think about how the scales of justice are often tilted in one favor and how justice is supposedly blind, probably because the Israelis pepper sprayed her. Did you know that Meta profits from hate speech and anti-Palestinian racism? Hamla, also known as the Arab Center for Social Media Advancement, is a digital rights and human rights activist group for Palestinians. They did an investigation prompted by the discovery that Facebook ran targeted ads calling for the assassination of individuals and ads calling for the forcible expulsion of Palestinians from the occupied West Bank to Jordan. Hamla's investigation highlighted swift approvals for 19 ads featuring hate speech and incitement in Hebrew against Arabs and Palestinians in the context of the, quote, war on Gaza. This sheds light on the failure of Meta's, quote, automated and manual review, end quote, enforcement mechanisms aimed at prohibiting inflammatory advertising content on its platforms and the company's financial gains from the propagation of its rhetoric. Hamla's investigation tested Meta's hostile classifiers in Hebrew and its automated advertising standards enforcement mechanisms. It ran a targeted campaign of 19 ads containing hate speech and incitement of violence in Hebrew across Meta's platforms. The approved ads included calls to, quote, wipe out Gaza, its women, children, and elderly, end quote, and other inflammatory phrases that explicitly called for killing Palestinians, burning all of Gaza, deporting people to other countries, and calls to carry out a second Nakba. For this investigation, Hamla also tested the same ads in Arabic and as with Hebrew. All of the Arabic ads were also approved. This follows a troubling development of Facebook allowing ad campaigns targeting Palestinians in their native language. For example, a Facebook profile called Migrate Now recently started posting ads calling on Arabs in Judea and Samaria to migrate to Jordan before it's too late. This coded language is an obvious use of intimidation and has no place on Meta's platforms. Furthermore, Meta should certainly not be profiting from groups running these types of hateful ads. Yeah. I was Judea and summarily silenced by the policy chief for Israel. And I want to thank Ion Palestine and Palestine Pixel and all of the major Palestine accounts who found me almost immediately and started lifting me back up. Thank you to everybody who's been helpful in helping me rebuild my platform. I am upset about it. That day that I was deleted from the internet, from Instagram's platform, I had received a very beautiful message from Wissam in Gaza. And I don't have access to that message anymore. And it's not every day that Wissam sends you a message. I wish I still had that message. But also the work that I was doing, right? I was boosting the Samir project all the time and various sources that show that Zionism is a deteriorating, disgusting, colonial, racist ideology that is lashing out in its last effort to sustain itself. But it's done. It's done. And that's why they had to disappear me, right? Because little old me was a threat to the Zionist narrative. You'll notice that the normalizer accounts weren't taken down. You'll notice that the people who don't support the full liberation of Palestine, right? They didn't have any trouble with their accounts. The Zionists have been trying to apply economic pressure to me for years. Best of luck, idiots. I already don't make any money. They've tried to reach out to every major comedy club in Los Angeles trying to make sure I don't get booked there. Guess what? I already don't get booked there. Zionists regularly send me death threats, threats of violence. They've put fraudulent charges on my credit card, and now they've destroyed my ability to connect with my community online. They hate to see a white Jewish man in a keffiyeh speaking fondly of Palestinians and their right to resistance, their legal right to resistance. They can't stand anyone who says the settlers should go back where they came from. They don't want someone with a large platform telling you Palestinians have the right to return to Palestine, to their houses that they have the keys for, with land deeds that go back to the Ottoman Empire. They'd rather you didn't think critically about a Jewish person who despises Zionism and wants to see the downfall of the Zionist settler colony in his lifetime, as well as the U.S. imperial colony. I often think about the Palestinian Bedouin tribe who's had their village demolished over 119 times by the IOF. Each time they say the same thing. We will rebuild. They took away my Instagram because they realized I was spending too much time on my phone. They were like, your screen time is bananas. Jordana Cutler acted like that limit app, you know, where it just pops up and it's like, you've been on this app for too long. She was like, you've been on this app for way too long and you got to go. There's no higher honor as a quote unquote social media influencer than the app telling you that you have too much influence. I'll be back. You're not going to stop me. Free Palestine.